I'm Ange, and my co-host here, my lovely co-host,
Mia.
and you will notice I am back in my car, so I will need to duck out of here about 10 to 12, just so everybody is aware. However, that does not mean the conversation has to end. That just means I have to go back to work. So I hope that's okay with everybody. And we are here, of course, to talk about Kink 101, consent,
Ooh.
queer as fuck panel. There's going to be
Mhm.
swearing. There's going to be some gnarly conversations. At the outset, I think me and I would both just like to say, ooh, we got some exciting movement here on some of the slides, and I am sorry, Mia. That's my
Oh,
computer
don't
being.
worry about it.
We just want everybody to be respectful. If you're not respectful, I will respectfully ask Lindsay to remove you from this panel. We are here to be respectful. There will be some fun conversations, but don't be a self-righteous asshat. That is like prime rule number one for kink. We're not here to kink shame. We're not here to get into everybody's personal kinks per se. We are here to try and set up a literal intro to Kink 101, which we will continue to talk about. So for myself, I'm Ange Keeley, use she, they pronouns, queer as fuck, even though I'm in a cis-presenting relationship, and that really seems to mess with people. I'm an AO3 guru, and I will fight people.
And I'm Mia, she, her. Been on the con circuit since 2009, and my own personal intro to kink has been 5 years long, which is why I'm here. I want other people's to not be 5 years long.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's like I can safely say I don't even know anymore. Like 5 years seems like a long time, but at the same time, 5 years seems like nothing because now it's been 5 years since COVID, which is wild, right?
Yes.
So we're just going to do a little bit of an intro for each of us. Our questions are up on the screen, and it's just a nice little way to dive into this. So, Mia, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Why don't you start?
Okay, sure. So, how did you get into kink? I'll be completely honest. Up until I actually started to learn formally about what like kink versus fetish and BDSM and everything was, I didn't even know how kinky I was. So I was like getting into kink way before I had a good definition for it. So that was back in maybe like the early 2000s. We'll just put a pin in that one. But not really understanding my own interests in things, or like why some things were really exciting to me and other things weren't, or like why an idea was really exciting. Also, I'm sorry about the weird shadows. I'm under a street light. But it was one of those things where like I started getting into kink probably in high school without actually knowing what that was or having any like safety net or learning about it. So yeah, so it's been a long time. I would say I have a much better understanding these days of what kink means to me, at least, and similarly with fetish and with BDSM and with all of the other things that are adjacent to kink, but actually are not like exclusive or mutually exclusive to the idea of kink. Like they're not, they don't exist in isolation, and they all kind of feed into each other, but they're not all the same things. And I think we'll discuss that more as we go through. What keeps me in the mindset of kink? I personally just like to keep learning. I like to keep trying new things. Sometimes something might crawl out of the woodwork and I'm like, oh, this became something that was exciting that I actually hadn't thought about before, but it catches my attention. And then we're off on a new kink adventure until I go, this no longer tastes like joy. Or similarly, wow, this is something I want to delve into deeper. So that's kind of a toss up. But what I try to do is remain agile, flexible, not physically, because I am not flexible in the fucking slightest.
Skill issue.
It's the truth, right? But one of the things too is like I do try to also give myself kindness. Sometimes a kink comes out of the woodwork that is a little unsettling for yourself, and you're like, oh, is that actually something I'm into? And sometimes it is, and then you got to explore that a little differently. One eye-opening kink-related experience I had very early on is that everybody who's ever been to Kanji, met me in person, or seen one of my panels realizes I'm a very outgoing, extroverted person. What blew my mind was when I was quite a bit younger, coming to understand that I'm like in terms of kink, I don't want to be in charge of things. Like I respect, consent, all of those obviously are central, but myself, I am not the person to take charge in those situations, and I quite enjoy being more of a bottom or a submissive role in those situations. And that, like, as how I had thought about myself, that blew my mind. So yeah, that is my intro to kink.
All right. So I guess I'm next. So the how did you get into kink, which is I'm somebody for whom it's an orientation. That's just I've it's just how I operate. Like vanilla, it's not really a choice, kink or vanilla for me.
That's a good point. That's a great way to say that. That is very true.
Well, and as we'll get into later, there kind of isn't really no such thing as vanilla.
Yeah.
Yep. But primarily I'm a sadist, and I knew I was this way since I was pretty little, but I didn't start doing anything about it until the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm. And what keeps you in the mindset of kink?
Again, because that's just how I operate. There's no like I need to get into a specific mindset. It's this is fairly present for me always.
Right. Which is great. Is it something that you find though that like maybe there is something about like being in a different space, or maybe there's something about like a certain type of interaction that maybe like puts you more in the mindset of considering kink, or is it just something that it's just part of your identity, it's who you are, so it's not really something you separate out?
It's something I tried to separate out for a long time, but I'm not trying to do anymore. So it's just foundational.
Awesome. And what was one eye-opening experience, kink related experience you've had?
Well, the earliest one I can concretely put a date stamp on is watching Return of the Jedi, age 7, and really liking the way that Luke writhes and screams as he's being electrocuted.
Damn, that is fantastic. Also, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like get out of the shadows here as I look like a creeper.
Oh, you're fine.
Also, that's phenomenal. I have to say too, that's like fascinatingly specific, because I think the sadism part for me is also probably like very embedded without me thinking too consciously about it. And I think that's like that's a fascinating realization, because I'm obviously at the time you didn't have the words for it, but looking back on it, you're like, that was formative. Right
oh yeah.
there. Yeah, fantastic. All right, everybody. So here's the agenda for the next 45-ish, maybe 40-ish minutes. What is kink? How to be a respectable perv. This is very important when we are going about kink. How do you know if it's kink or if it's just something a little to the left? And then we have a whole bunch of handouts, resources. I have some websites. Where can I find more info? Some safe healthcare information, and safe space for you, and what happens when things go wrong. These are all very important things that we will continue to talk about. So,
did you forget you put that?
Yeah, I kind of did. So, did you know kink is not the same as BDSM? As I said, it is not synonymous with queerness or LGBTQ, but it is associated with all of these things due to the systemic oppression of non-normative cis hetero relationships, despite what history tells us, that the queers were always here. And this is part of our conversation tonight. You will appreciate the fact that on the internet there is a plethora of memes about how they were roommates, or like historically taking away the fact that humans have always had agency. As we talked about last night in the monster fucking panel, there's always been this interest in things that are taboo or things that would seem not socially normative. That has been a part of humanity for a very long time. That is not something that anybody should be surprised about, but it is something that regimes like to try and erase, because that erases the individuality and the individual needs of people. So, all right. Take it away, Mia.
All right. Everyone's a little kinky, little bit kinky sometimes. Doesn't mean we go around committing sex crimes. All right.
Best song
So,
ever.
I'm not going to quote you the studies and the numbers because that's not really the point, but there have been multiple studies done um, that have revealed that most of the population does have kinky either interests or desires, whether or not they've acted on them.
Yep.
And everyone's individual interests are as unique as their own fingerprint. I was saying vanilla or the our societally accepted standards of what is normal is not really a thing. It's a construct as much as any other social construct is.
Yep.
Um, so while kink might be, it might be sexual, it might not be. Um, whatever this quotation marks unusual and non-normative mode of expression that you crave and are interested in, the most important thing is you need to give yourself permission to be authentic, no matter how weird whatever your desires might, however weird they might seem. Somebody else's is weirder. You won't have to go looking very far, um, and your desires are deserved.
Yes. Yes. Excellent call out, because they are deserved. There's a lot of
Hmm.
shame, a lot of stigma around this. But that's just as much of a social construct as like a binary gender system. Like that is,
Exactly.
those things are not things that people should feel ashamed about.
Hmm.
They're specific to each person as well. I think too, one of the things that we talked about when we were setting up this panel was that when we discuss this idea of normalcy too, it's, you know, we kind of just hinted at it, but it's really predicated on what we see going on around us, what's being pumped to us through the media, and also what is being demonized or vilified in the media. And that's a really hard thing to overcome, because we see it all around us, and people will say things even if they're not practicing that themselves. They will say things out loud that then immediately make people feel worse about whatever they're experiencing or what their desires are or how they want to
Yeah.
engage in these ideas of kink. And it's like, that's a really hard thing to overcome. And I have a lot of hope actually for younger generations, because in some good ways and some bad ways, their access to globalized social media means that they're able to ask questions, sometimes in a safer, anonymous way than maybe how we were raised, where, like, I'm from a small town. Trying to discuss this shit when I was growing up in a safe, sane, and consensual manner was fucking non-existent. We didn't have the internet. I couldn't just go looking for safe, sane, and consensual information.
Probably couldn't find any information at all.
Well, I mean, I did find a lot of Playboy magazines and like subscription magazines.
Yeah, but
Those,
that's not really information.
well, they weren't, but sometimes there was like anonymous letters that were actually kind of insightful, which was really fascinating.
Okay.
But I mean, we shouldn't be so quick to vilify history either as not having a code of ethics. It's just that
Mhm.
that was not widely tossed around. People didn't really know about it because those groups, or those like inner circles of people that were engaging in things that were socially non-normative, had to be careful about who, how, and when they were discussing that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to live and thrive as fully as we can. Ergo, why,
Exactly.
you could choose CBT, you could choose cock and ball torture, or you could choose both. Just a thought. Like, there's no reason why you can't have all of these things at the same time. So, what is kink? It's a great question. What the fuck is kink? Uh, do you want to start on this, Mia?
Sure, I'll start on this. In a lot of ways, um, it is very much the same as queer, as being an umbrella for anything that is not um, quotation marks normal.
Yeah. Yep. Also, I think it's really important to call out here: kinks do not have to be sexual. They might be, but they do not have to be. Point number one on all of this is that don't be a narrow-minded fuck. Kinks do not have to have a sexual aspect to them, and we will get into that later on as well. Um, it's adult play with different toys, literally and figuratively. It's a way for people to engage in their fantasies, or in these ideas or mechanisms of engagement that bring them satisfaction in some way, that are generally very niche and very specific to each person. specific desires and turn-ons. And they're also things that when you get to the point where if you want to enact these, it is so important that they are well discussed. We will be talking about communication later, but it is discussion and communication do not kill the thrill. They do not kill the thrill. They support the thrill. They are an important part of the thrill, because sometimes the kinky shit is really dangerous, but can be really fun and really exciting. For example, electric play can be super great, but you have to have some good boundaries and care in place to make sure that even if it gets, intense, that there are ways to take care of people after that. But it is play and playful. That's the whole point of kink, is that you're trying things out. Yeah. What do you think, Mia?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Okay. So, okay, but where should you start? Where should you start with kink? We have a handout because Mia is awesome like that, and Mia made a handout. And that is really fucking cool. Mia, is that on the website, or where is that landing? Do we know?
I don't know if it's on the website. I can drop it. I can drop it in Discord somewhere, I think.
Yeah, drop it in the Discord, I think in the panels discussion. I'll put all my links in the panels discussion too after this for people to look at, because I have a lot of like self-care links. So for the first part, where do you start? Get a good VPN. Start by safely researching what you are into. I guarantee you that you are there are at least 1 or 2 other people who share your interests and have written about their interest under a pseudonym somewhere on the internet. Do some research. Like I'm not just saying that because I like being in school and because I like being a master's student. I am saying that because, especially in the realm of getting into some pretty heavy psychodynamic intimacy, you need to do your research and be very aware of what you want. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers, but you need to have some good idea of where your boundaries are. And then this is Mia's wonderful recommendation, because Mia, you know much more about the educators than I do. So Mia said, find an educator that speaks to you. Very important. Explore what appeals to you. Explore podcasts, read posts on places like FetLife. Try not to get caught up in what you think it should be. And do not believe the one true way monotheism of self-righteous fuckwits. That is my addition.
Yes, because you're going to run into this everywhere. No, like wherever there's a way to do things, there's always going to be people claiming there's the one true way, and at best it's gatekeeping, because especially in things like BDSM, there is a small amount of gatekeeping that does need actually to be done in order to keep people safe, but at the same time, you get old guard being mad that things are a lot more accessible now, and resenting the chillins for being able to access these safer and easier than they were able to.
100%.
But then at worse, you really could get taken advantage of.
Yeah. And I think too, really important to point out, like, accessibility has changed a lot, not just in terms of like, I can access these spaces now, but also in terms, somebody brought this up last night in the monster fucking panel, really importantly, discussions of neurodivergence, discussions of people access, like physically being able to access the realm of kink and fet and BDSM and all these things. We've busted open the world and broken down a lot of doors and walls in terms of what we consider to be acceptable. And that includes how people are able to engage and what changes need to be made in order to keep people safe. And there's definitely a lot of resistance to that. And like you say, Mia, like with the old guard, sometimes with the young guard, sometimes it's how people have been taught to engage with certain groups. And they get really upset when you say, listen, for me to be safe in this situation, I need like not to have loud, surprising noises happen, or I need not to have these textures, or I need to have my hands always bound in front of me if you're into shibari or rope play, because it's really triggering to have my hands bound behind my back. All kinds of things. And I think that's a really important to recognize, is that educators have changed the face of kink. Big time. Like you were telling me, Mia, that you found a lot of educators that you've really enjoyed watching and learning from, or listening to. Yeah. Can you just like maybe talk about a couple of them quick?
Yeah, sure. So one of my top suggestions is going to be Sunny Megatron, who does the podcast American Sex. She's a great place to start if you want overviews of what different kinks are,
Hmm.
and um, Sunny is also neurodivergent and queer and poly and um, uh, BIPOC. So um, she's at the intersection of a lot of different experiences.
Hmm.
Um, so she's a
Where did
really great place. Hmm?
we just question, where do you find your educators? Just
Um, I started. Where did I even start? um, a lot of poking around on FetLife and YouTube. And
mm,
after getting through a couple of not so great ones, then I found a really solid list. And I mostly listen to them on the app Podbean.
oh, what is that?
It's just a mobile app that
Oh,
like it's a podcast app.
oh, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Sorry, I didn't want to break your train of thought there, but
Yeah,
I
no
think
worries.
important is like no, YouTube is full of all kinds of garbage. We know this. The internet
Yeah.
is full of hot trash. So yeah, if there's definitely going to be some false starts, you're going to have to be really careful with the information you're intaking. But there are good things out there, and I think Mia, you put some of those in the handout that you made.
Yeah, I put about 7 or 8 different certified like top tier educators,
Awesome.
all of
Um,
whom have like podcasts or courses and writings and um yeah, if you're looking for like really specific kinks, you might not necessarily find it in in that list, but almost everything you're looking for, I think you can.
yeah, 100%. I would also like to point out too, there is a huge body of literature, academic literature out there about kink and psychology and mental health and wellness. You do have to do some digging because there's a lot of ones out there that are like, oh, well, kink and fetish and BDSM are all part of the DSM-5. That is not true. These have been removed from the DSM-5 because that was horrifying, actually, that they were ever classified as a diagnosed mental illness. That is not what is happening here. But there is really great literature out there from all kinds of spaces that talk about those intersections, because again, that's important.
Mhm.
Also, I think just to wrap up this slide in particular, do not feel like you need to faceplant into this. Take your fucking time.
Yeah,
You
do not move fast and break things because
no,
that's how you get hurt real bad.
yeah, and you don't need to rush into all of your kinks all at once. For those of us with ADHD, like myself, who is fucking phenomenally ADHD, it might be like doing a new craft. You're like, oh, I'll start this craft, and then I'll start this craft, and then I'll start this craft, and then I'll start this craft.
No,
Um,
don't do it.
yeah, yeah, and so I had to temper that about myself, but also I do most of my learning face to face and in person after I've like sort of psychologically thought about something. So yeah, okay, so this is like great, but where do I start? So again, a great question in the chat that leads immediately into this. And you can start formally by like trying to go to a munch or by taking a course, which Mia has mentioned both of these. I think it's really important though to mention like do not jump right into play parties and playing with strangers. Like yes, play parties are great and super fun, and if that's something that intrigues you, you should explore it. But like there's etiquette, there's a reason why munches and play parties happen, but you should know the rules and the boundaries before you go hopping in there and thinking like this is fine, I can just jump in here like genitalia to the walls. I was going to say balls to the walls, but like tits to the walls, balls to the walls, whatever to the walls, doesn't matter. But, make sure that you understand what is happening because munches are not the same thing as a play party. As you can see in the description, a munch is like a really public hangout. It's not to go there and play and try stuff necessarily unless there's like a demo or something set up, but it's just a meeting of like-minded people. And then taking courses is always a great option, especially if you want to try something that's a little more intense. Let's say you're really into shibari. Let's say you're into something that's like most people would think is a little dicey, like a little bit of blood play, and you want to try out needles and things like that. There are really good courses on how to do that safely. So take some time and do some learning.
In fact, most stuff you really should not attempt without getting some sort of instruction first.
Yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
this does make it a lot more difficult, but ultimately safety has to be priority.
yes, 100%. I will say I do not always read the warnings on the labels of the sex toys that I buy. Fair, but like but you should. You should. And especially too, because people don't really think about this, but things like impact play, or like if you are into flogging, or if you're into paddles or anything like that, you can really damage somebody. Like you can really fuck somebody up. If you don't take the time to learn, that can actually severely hurt somebody in a way that is not fun, safe, sane, or
Mm-hmm.
cool. So like, yes, be careful, please. Otherwise, Medic Dave has to go and find you and drag your sorry ass to a hospital, and nobody wants that either.
Medic Dave might not be able to immediately pinpoint that when you missed your swing, you did some kidney damage.
Yeah, 100%. Kidney damage or doing irreparable damage. Like we joked about cock and ball torture on the previous couple of slides. You can permanently fucking hurt someone by doing anything to genitals. You need to know what the hell you are doing. It doesn't matter if it sounds sexy and kinky to just like go ham. Do not. Do not, because that is how you end up being like disabled by what should have been a fun night or a fun day. Okay, so what is a kink? It could be a flavor. Sorry, I forgot about half these memes.
That's fine.
It could be a flavor, or it could be the hero's journey of self-discovery and worldview. You will all know by now that as like somebody who works in mental health and wellness, I'm really big on the psychological aspect of this, because you should be aware of what is going on before you dive into that psycho-intimate space. So you might be surprised by what surprises you. Your taste will evolve with you as you grow and change as a human. And also give yourself space to really engage with what you're feeling and experiencing as you explore, because it sometimes it surprises the emotions right out of you, and that can be really hot in the moment. But then you got to think about the aftercare, because sometimes the letdown, even if the emotions are good, is something that you need to plan for, I think is fair to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also giving yourself space, it's the same thing as giving yourself kindness. Make sure that you are understanding that like you are a human, and however you are engaging in your kink or in your fetish, whether or not that is purely in your head or you're enacting it, give yourself a little bit of kindness for exploring these kinks. Like we said, like do not think like you deserve to be able to thrive in this space. Okay, so this is the fun part, obviously. To be a respectable perv. Some tips and tricks and etiquette for engaging in kink. We think this is obviously not a completely extensive list. This is not an exhaustive list. This is a list we came up with. Do understand that like you can certainly add to this list. Feel free to take screenshots. And you know, like I said, feel free to explore these, because so I will say this, just a little bit of background. I've been to a lot of Kink 101 panels, and usually they dive right into sort of the tea on like how the kink community works and functions. That is not an intro to kink. That is
No.
also not like setting you up for success. It's great that the leaders of these panels feel like they can give that information out, but for people who have truly never like stopped to think about what kink means to them, that's not an intro. That's like you skipped 15 steps and now you're standing at a munch going, what the fuck? Or you're at a place like Oasis and you're like, I don't know what the boundaries are here. Right? So it's really important to, I think, have these kinds of panels. A step on in the etiquette to say please and thank you. Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. Step one of etiquette is absolutely to fucking mind your manners. Please and thank you. I don't care how you identify. If you identify as top, bottom, God, whatever, I don't give a shit. You better say please and thank you, and you better fucking ask. But we will get into this, because that is literally the next part of this discussion. So we went with the good. Do you want to start on this one, Mia?
Yeah, sure. So, the good communication, obviously, just like in the rest of relationships, people say communication is important, but people don't talk about what that actually means.
Yes. Yes. 100%. We have
Sorry.
do you want to skip over to the right side of the panel and go through that, or
We'll come back to that afterwards because that's the biggest one.
yeah, truth. Okay.
So, no matter what you're engaging in, I'm just gonna hold this. You need the fundamental components of kindness.
Hmm?
You need to be prepared for talking before any action. You need to you need to have respect both for yourself and for
Mm-hmm.
the other person.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
need good self-awareness. You need to have a good plan for aftercare. That is something that we're not really going to talk about here, but I do have resources for.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes check-ins 24 hours after playing, because the kind of emotional drops you can get can be very not fun.
Yeah.
The and put this the circle of care. If you want to try something risky by yourself, have a safe check-in planned with a trusted individual. So, like, if you're trying self-tying on yourself, it might go fine, but you might get into a situation where your hand goes numb or you get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or even
Um,
like something might fail too. Like it could be
mhm.
like something just doesn't go the way you thought it did.
Yeah, and you might need somebody to come be there to comfort you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you put anything in an orifice, you have to put a condom on it. Doesn't matter what it is, just do it.
Truth. That just makes cleanup so much easier as well. Just put a fucking condom on it. And
Yep.
also then that prevents, if for some reason that did not get cleaned well, or if you want to use an insertable that maybe wasn't technically made to be an insertable, just keeps things from getting nasty.
Yep.
Yep.
On that note, wash your toys always.
Yes. Yes. Always wash your toys, and not in the dishwasher. You know why? Because body grade silicone is not made to handle dishwashers, and dishwashers hold on to a lot of nasty shit. It is not a sterile space. I don't care how clean you think your dishes are. It is not. And also soap scum that ends up in your toys, also not great. Just don't do it. Just hand wash them gently and
I've
lovingly.
never heard of somebody trying to put a toy in the dishwasher. That is ludicrous.
Buddy. So, sometimes I had somebody tell me that once when I went to an event, and I was like, you've got to be joking. And they were like, no, like that's like how I wash my toys. And I was like, one, your poor toys, don't tell me how much money you spend on them. And two,
Jesus.
like, I know, I was like, and two, you don't need like Dawn Tricure dish soap sparkling white on your fucking insertables. Like,
No.
such a bad idea. So do not, please just gently hand wash with whatever toy safe cleaner is recommended by the seller. Because if you're on a website, they will often have like recommended, you should use water based for this, or you should use this cleaner for that. It's not tingly. Dave, that is not tingly. That's not a good tingle. That's a third degree chemical burn tingle.
Oh.
Fun tingle on the internal bits. And toy care in general. And this is important if you have things with motors, or things that inflate, or things that have pumps, or things that have seals or suction on them. Take good care of them, because if something goes wrong, like let's say you have an insertable that then for some reason can't deflate because it's supposed to inflate and it can't deflate, or if you don't know what you're doing and you overinflate it and then something pops internally.
Oh.
Yeah, not great. Taking care of your toys is fucking important. It's just like taking care of anything. Just make sure that you are aware that like things are clean, or as clean as you can make them, as sterile as you can make them, and in good working condition before you go and get really into a scene and have something not work for you properly. Just a thought. Also, this one, I think, Mia, is the best one, and you came up with this one. You don't have to conform to labels. You can make your experience your own.
Yeah, because this goes back to what I was saying about one truisms, is that there's a lot of perceptions, especially if you're on the internet, about what things are supposed to look like, or how things are supposed to go, or what things do and don't go together. And you don't have to listen to any of that. All that matters is that you are playing in a way that's true to you.
Truth. And then just to run over here to the other side. So when we talked about communication, as Mia rightfully pointed out, we say communication, but what does communication mean anyways? Being a good listener, first and foremost. That is not waiting to speak your turn. Like that is not waiting just to like so I can say whatever I need to say coming out of my mouth. That means stopping your internal monologue and listening to what the other person is saying. Like, actually listen. And then being a good listener also means being able to reflect back. So if you think you understood something but you're not sure, try saying it back to them and being like, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you are enjoying this, or you do not like this, or I'm hearing that this is this kind of a scene, or this is what you're looking for. Try reflecting it back to them. This is good social work practice. This is good kink practice. Just listen and then try and reflect it and make sure you're both on the same page. Because sometimes if I say something like, I want to be railed through the bed, that means something really different to the person I'm playing with. Or if I say harder when if I'm being hit or something like that, that means something different. And you have to be really clear about that. Do you want to talk about being able to articulate what you're looking for, Mia?
Yes. So this is a difficult thing that you will probably have to build the skills towards. Um, and this is why I pitched that we do a little demo
Mm,
about what the communication actually looks like. Because it's fine and dandy to say I want you to spank me, but what is the emotion you're looking for? How are you looking to feel about that? Are you looking to get um like are you looking to get bruised for a week? Are you looking to get just a light little appetizer before doing something else?
yep. Yeah. So, like, for instance, if I went up to Mia and I said, I like being spanked, Mia might say just what she said here and be like, hey, okay, great. What kind of emotion do you want to say? And I would stop and think about it. And I'd say, I really don't like being humiliated. This is not the kind of spanking where I want to feel degraded. I want, but I do like the idea of not being able to sit right for a week. So that's a good one. Pretty happy about that. And I would like it to be, I would like it to not be with a solid paddle, if that's okay.
I'll say, okay, what would you prefer that I use my hand? Um,
Mm.
what were do you have phrases for if you want me to slow down or to speed up intensity?
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer you use your hand. I really like using stoplights because they are super easy and simple to remember. So, red is stop scene, yellow is slow down or pause, and green is everything's good. And I don't have to think about that too hard when I'm in the middle of a scene. So I like using that. And yeah, that's some pretty good
There,
communication.
yeah, that's a basic example.
Yeah. Um, but this also goes into boundaries. So you heard me say
Mhm.
several things that were boundary setting in there. Me saying, I don't like this. I don't want to be humiliated. I don't like being degraded. Um, Also, Mia asking very astutely, what would you be like? What would you prefer that I use? Because maybe Mia has comfort levels. Maybe she doesn't actually want to use her hand, or maybe she's okay with that, or she prefers like a different thing for spanking. All of that is fine, but we would have that conversation and continue to have that conversation until we were pretty clear about what we were going to get into. Um, and then we can both respect each other's boundaries. Next point, being able to respect someone else's stated boundaries. You do not get to run roughshod over them,
Mhm.
which leads us into the final 3 points, which is no means no at any time in any format or medium. No means no. I think that needs to be stated and cannot be stated enough ever, especially in kink. Well, especially
Right.
anywhere, but like especially in kink, if you're playing with something, no means no. Yeah. Maybe means no, and do not push until that person readdresses the topic. And yes means yes and can be rescinded at any time. A yes can turn into a maybe or a no at any time, and you do not have the right to say, but you said yes before. That is not cool. That is not kosher. That is not okay. You do not get to throw that back in somebody's face that they might have said yes and then they were uncomfortable or they weren't okay continuing and they change that to a no. If they change their answer, you will fucking respect that or I will come for you with a fucking 2x4. And that is not an idle threat. I cannot handle it when people will not respect that. Okay. The unfun kind of bad. Do you want to talk about the first one, Mia?
Sure. This is the the not great do not do. So it shouldn't have to be said, but uh, don't get ahead of yourself and message random people on the internet about doing kink with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I shouldn't need to say that, but here we are.
Yes. Just even for clarity, because some people, if you're on FetLife, it looks like a wild, crazy, fun, good time, and you might think that, like, as I said, like, their profile, even if their profile says they're open, treat them like a fucking human and get to know them first. Introduce yourself and be kind. Don't just assume because they have a joking, interesting, intimate relationship with other people on FetLife that you can just hop into that same zone. That's not how that works. And you know what? If you're like myself and maybe you can get really excited, or you're really extroverted, and like to you boundaries aren't the same, take a step back and try and put yourself in that mindset of how would I approach like a complete stranger on the subway in somewhere that is not FetLife? How would I approach somebody in a less socially engaged situation, and what could I do about that? That would be my recommendation. Yeah, do you want to carry on? Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, that's fine. Um, do even if you have a scene that is fully arranged, good to go, it's day of, if you are not in a good headspace, you need to cancel it. That's if you are again, should go without saying, do not do any kink if you're drunk or if you're under any sort of influence. But if you're having a really bad day, like if you are just like if you're in a rage from work, if you are in if you're in if you're having a fit of depression, like if you are not in a good place, do not do this, because the amount of like chemical and emotional stuff that goes on when you do perform these things means that if you are not in the right headspace, it's going to be a bad time for you or for the other person, probably both.
Yeah, 100%. And that's regardless of what the outcome of the scene is.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to slip into an altered state of mind, no matter what position you're playing in that scene. And yeah, and you end up, as I said, confusing disassociation with care. And that could be a really slippery slope into then not taking care of yourself and replacing self-care with kink, which is not healthy and can get toxic really fucking fast. So like this is where it's really, really important to be aware of this. Also, thank you so much, Claytronic Man. I'm sorry, it's on my phone. It's very tiny. Says, I think you're doing a good job of articulating the nuance and the variables. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton.
Yeah. So expecting to that this all falls in together. Thou shalt not create drama if you do not get your way. If that yes turns into a no or a maybe, that is not a reason for you to hound somebody. Okay? Like that is not cool. That is not good manners. That is not anything that should deserve you to continue to engage with that individual. Do not start shit or start talking smack about somebody if they change their answer. Every person is an individual. Get fucked. Also expecting that if you had one encounter that you are automatically included in any future social run-ins. Unless that is pre-negotiated, you had one run-in with somebody, cool. If you see them again socially, you better fucking ask. Like, unless you have a very established relationship, do not assume anything. And sex is not an assumed outcome. As we have said, go pound salt. Yeah. Do you want to just do the last two there, Mia?
Yeah, sure.
Last three.
Yeah, no worries. Less of an issue in this day and age, but still an issue. Don't assume that somebody's identity outside of kink is public without confirmation. A lot of people, to get outed as kinky, especially depending on what it is, could be very damaging for for their careers, for their family life. You don't know what kind of stakes they've got.
No, you don't. Nope.
And don't assume that their relationships indicate what they're into. It's also this big one that there's a lot of discourse on the internet. which there doesn't need to be. It is okay not to be into something, but don't yuck somebody else's yum.
Hmm.
So like it's going to be very reasonable that you're going to find some stuff gross. You're going to find it like you don't want that anywhere near you. That is absolutely fine. You just got to be fine with other people chasing their happiness.
Yeah,
And
and
that's all it is.
you'll excuse my bad spelling here because I definitely did not grammatically check this.
Well, that's
But
fine.
like this is something that's, you know, we were kind of edging onto with the monster panel again last night. If you were concerned about medical shit or abuse that you were seeing happening in a scene, but you were not directly involved in, ask. Wait for a natural break in that scene and ask. Do not assume anything. I've seen some really intense shit. I've had friends see some really intense shit where it's like somebody's sadomasochism is like what I would consider like Guantanamo Bay level torture. That's cool because for them that is a negotiated part of their like relationship. That's great. They have their medical things sorted out. This is like involving like piercing somebody with a nail. It's pretty intense shit. But they had their safety already in place, and for somebody to come in there and break their scene because they thought they knew better, like it's a fine line and you got to toe that line, but like respect. First and foremost, respect and communication.
That is also not your individual responsibility in a kind of public scene like this. That would be the responsibility of the dungeon monitor.
100%. 100%. And this one was named by Mia. Kill Bill sirens intensify the weird. So, trying something risky without researching it first by yourself, top, dom, bottom, sub, doesn't matter. Do your fucking research, as I have said multiple times now. That is just so important. You are putting yourself and others in serious risk if you don't take the time to do your research. Also, Mia, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time fast because we're having a good time.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll speed it up.
I was going to say, feel free to chirp in. I'm going to run through these, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it.
Do not try and change someone's no to a maybe or to a yes. Fuck you. This is different than I haven't tried this before. Let's talk, which me and I talk quite a bit about behind the scenes, because what that actually means is if they say, I don't know, can you tell me more about it? You have the opportunity to explain yourself. Take that as a golden opportunity and do your best to be honest and open and authentic with what you would like to try, and then respect their answer. That's it. Don't refuse to accept boundaries. Boundaries are boundaries. Fucking respect. Assuming that your goals and outcomes are the same for your play partner, they may not be, regardless of anybody's position. If your goal is sex and your goal is like intercourse, you better make that really clear. And if that is not their goal, that should not be an expectation of the scene. Deviating outside of the negotiations without explicit consent. You can have sort of like a general idea of where a scene is going. You may not know exact, but you can say, listen, this is a hard boundary, do not cross. And that should be respected at all times. Assuming an invitation to play extends beyond the individual you spoke with, i.e. if that person has partners or another group, or if they're having a group event, consent only includes the person you directly address. If you do not have consent from the rest of the group, or you are not invited into that group, that is not your space. Get fucked. Do not assume sex is available or a shared goal, as we continue to say, and do not assume that your preference extends socials. Extends socially? Was that what I was meant to say? Oh yeah.
Probably.
I.e., if you are a dom and someone else is a sub, do not assume you can act like a dom to them outside of whatever like shared space or shared intimacy you are having. For instance, me telling all y'all that I'm pretty subby, that's fine and that's great, and I'm quite happy to tell you that. But if somebody comes up and expects me to like act or present in a way that they would consider to be subby, I will not only punch you in the junk, I will make your life a living hell for harassment. That is not an okay assumption. And to do that to somebody is really problematic. Also, I don't have time to go into this, but we really shouldn't go into this too deeply anyways. But there's a serious difference between kink and something that is morally evil. Because moral evil is like, this is a big trigger warning. So just everybody put your thinking hat on just for a minute. But like, pedophilia is not the same thing as age play. That is not something we can get into right now, but those are very different things. And so like, just understand that like we can be transversive, we can test social norms, we can test boundaries but there are still ethics and morals involved in kink and BDSM. This is not just like the Wild West of causing pain or doing things to others. There has to be consent and compersion always. Okay. So I think this is all. Yeah, I know. So how do I know if it's a kink or just a little to the left? It's subjective. If you've only done one position, oral could be kinky as fuck, which Joy brought up, or Mia brought up, which is a great point, is that, yeah, if you've only done one thing, anything could be kinky. If you've only ever done missionary, man, doing it standing up against a wall is going to blow your mind. Okay, it's going to be great. It's not linear. You might start off with something really heavy and then slide backwards into something that's a little more gentle. And you're like, oh, weird, this is also a kink. That's fine. And that's great. My personal thoughts on kink are that it's a repeatable thing. It's something that comes up again and again and again. This is not a new thing for you. It could be a one-off, maybe, but that's less likely to be a kink and more something that was just like titillating at that moment, which is fine. It's still kinky. It's still non-normative, but like I would say an established kink or a fetish is something that's like reoccurring. It doesn't cause undue distress. It's not an intrusive thought. Please put the light bulb down for Dave's sanity. That should not be inserted into your body. That is not a fun time. It sounds like a fun time psychologically, and that is something you can explore at a fantasy level. For the love of God, if you are going to insert that, I hope to God you have condoms made out of Kevlar. It's something that you want to learn about or explore more in fantasy or in research or in real life. That's great. It's also arbitrary. At the end of the day, it's about embracing the full spectrum of who you are and however that takes shape for you. Yeah. So in the chat, just, I don't know if you're watching me here. So someone said
no, I had to pull it up full screen on my computer so I could actually see it.
Okay, so somebody mentioned that they're a person who's been through trauma, so people have to be gentle with me. That is completely valid, and that doesn't mean you should not be able to explore your kinks, because if people aren't respecting you, fuck them with a rake. That is not okay. You absolutely can say my boundaries are gentle, 100%. So I'm going to say a really quick thank you all, and also I'm going to have to turn off my camera and my mic and kind of, I'll be in the background, I'll be in the chat, but I've got to go back to work. Mia, do you want to take it away and just explain the resource page?
Yeah, so this is half of the resources that I'll be posting in the Discord. It's pretty straightforward. The where to find things is so Forbidden Tickets is a great website for finding online courses. A lot of the courses on there are in San Francisco because, yeah. But there are some of the best educators are on there and offer like really reasonable rates for really quality stuff. FetLife is great for getting a lot of information and for finding events, even if you don't make a public persona and do a lot of posting. It's good for just information gathering. Some of my top recommended podcasts and educators, and then there is more. I have a handout I have a really good scene planning handout.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys, for your very informative panel. Yay!
Oh, thank you for hosting us.